So let's cultivate our motivation. So it may happen at different times in our life that we encounter people that we are afraid of, whether there's reason to be afraid or not, we are afraid. So a very good way to deal with our mind and to expand our mind in those situations is to look at the people we're afraid of and think of them as children, as babies, and how cute they were when they were babies. Or even to keep the appearance that they have now, and to think that they, like each and every sentient being, simply want to be happy and don't want to suffer. So in other words, we have to kind of touch their heart, so to speak, and realize that their present appearance, which feels threatening to us, is not who they are. And they're simply a sentient being wanting to be peace, wanting to live happily without suffering. And they've been children, and they will one day be elderly people too. In other words, we're trying to overcome the mind that grasps them as being inherently threatening. And then as you do that, generate compassion for them, wanting them to be free of misery, wanting them to have a peaceful mind, wanting them to feel satisfied and nurtured. And then to expand that mind to all living beings everywhere. And then feel our own fortune at having met the Dharma, having met the ways to tame our own mind and to increase our potential and our ability to be of benefit to others. And then generate bodhicitta, wanting to attain awakening for all these beings. we were talking about the benefits of bodhicitta the last few times. And how generating bodhicitta benefits us in this life, benefits us in future lives, and is the whole cause of enabling us to become a Buddha. Not the whole cause, but without it, there's no way to become a Buddha. So then Shantideva goes on to verse 15, where he says the bodhicitta, if summed up, should be known in its two aspects: the mind wishing for awakening and the one engaging in the path to awakening. Okay? So here, we're talking about two kinds of bodhicitta that are not totally different from each other. They exist in one continuum. So the first one, the aspiring bodhicitta, is the wish to become a Buddha, and engaging bodhicitta is when you've actually made up your mind to, and you want to engage in the bodhisattva practices to become a Buddha. Okay, so this is a division of bodhicitta by nature. Okay, there's different ways of talking about bodhicitta. This is dividing it by nature. You can divide it by examples, in which case there's 22 kind of examples of different forms of bodhicitta. That will be in volume 5, which is coming out in August. So I won't go through it now. And then there's another way too of, in terms of, I don't know, what's it called? Maybe degrees or, yeah, we'll come upon it. Okay, so bodhicitta here, how he defines it, is the mind that accompanies the aspiration to complete awakening for the purpose of others. Actually, I've heard it for the purpose of all sentient beings, not just others. And I've heard it also defined as the primary mind with two aspirations. One aspiration to work for the benefit of sentient beings, the second aspiration to attain full awakening, to be able to do so. So the first aspiration, to work for the benefit of sentient beings, is like the causal aspiration, because when you want to do that, then you look for the way to work for sentient beings, and then that gives you the aspiration to attain full awakening. And it's that aspiration that, is the foremost one, because the object of the first aspiration is sentient beings, and you're wanting to benefit them. The object of the second aspiration is awakening, and you're wanting to attain it. But it's said to be the primary mind with these two aspirations. So different ways of talking about it. Okay, one analogy that is often given for the difference between aspiring and engaging is you want to go to Dharamsala, and aspiring is sitting here going, gee, it'd be so nice to go to Dharamsala. This is His Holiness, be with the other teachers. And you're just thinking how wonderful it would be and saying, I'd really like to go someday. And then, so that's like, that's like the aspiring bodhicitta. You're saying, gee, I want to attain Buddhahood, and it would be great to do it, but you're still sitting here. Then engaging bodhicitta is you plan your journey, you buy your ticket, you get on the plane, you go through immigration and customs, you get on the train, you take the wild taxi ride up the hill, and you arrive there. And that's like engaging bodhicitta, where you're actually engaging in the bodhisattva practices. So aspiring bodhicitta, we generate, and then it becomes engaging bodhicitta when we're actually doing the bodhisattva practices. So that's why I said the two exist in one continuum. They aren't two separate kinds of things. Yeah. So you have aspiring bodhicitta when you start doing the practices. That's when you also take the bodhisattva vow, and at that time you have engaging bodhicitta. Okay. So then the question comes, well, what about us right now? Yeah. It's like I've taken aspiring bodhicitta, but it's not there all the time in my mind. And I've even taken the bodhisattva vow, and sometimes that's definitely not all the time in my mind and in my actions. And sometimes actually I'm doing the opposite of it. So what they say is, for us ordinary beings, we've taken a similitude, okay, of the bodhisattva vow. We've generated a similitude of aspiring bodhicitta and engaging bodhicitta. So it's not the actual one, because what we feel, the demarcation line of bodhicitta is when you see any sentient being, what arises in your mind is the wish to become fully awakened in order to benefit them. So, just attaining that is already something beyond when we really think about it, okay? Because our self-centered thought is just so strong and pervasive. But we're generating a similitude of that aspiring bodhicitta. And then, we take the bodhisattva vow like we did on Vesak Day with His Holiness. Then, we have a similitude of the actual bodhisattva vow, because to actually have engaging bodhicitta, you have entered the path of accumulation. I don't know about you. I haven't entered the path of accumulation, Few things I have to do before that. Okay. So when we do the aspiring bodhicitta, okay, there's a ceremony for it, and there's two ways we can do it. We can just generate bodhicitta in the presence of our teacher. His Holiness often does this ceremony, when he's teaching at big events. And there you're just generating bodhicitta in the presence of your teacher. You're not taking any kind of precepts or guidelines or anything like that. Okay? Then you can also do, so that's just called generating bodhicitta. Then there's also generating aspiring bodhicitta. Then there's generating aspiring bodhicitta with commitment, and it's the exact same ceremony, except in your mind you're committing yourself to attain Buddhahood, okay? Even though you aren't engaging in the bodhisattva deeds yet, you're committing yourself to do that. And at that time, you take what's called the 8 precepts of aspiring bodhicitta. There's actually 12, but there's 2 sets of 4 that are blended together, so that counts as 4 instead of 8. So I thought just to go through those right now, so you'll get some idea of, because we've talked before about what bodhicitta is, but here is, if you're really serious, and you want to generate aspiring bodhicitta with the commitment to attain Buddhahood, then these are the 8 guidelines to help you so that your bodhicitta doesn't degrade this life and doesn't degrade in future lives. Okay, so the reason I want to go over these is because they're very practical guidelines. Yeah, and I think for us, having very practical guidelines that we can use in our daily life helps us tremendously to generate bodhicitta and increase it, and not to have it just be like a toy that we generate from time to time because it's part of our Buddhist hobby, okay? But to really be quite attentive to these. Okay, so the first set of 4 has to do with how to protect your bodhicitta from degenerating in this life. Okay, so before we can even talk about preventing it from degenerating in future lives, we have to preserve it in this life. Okay, so what's going to help us do that? First, remembering the advantages of bodhicitta repeatedly. Where are we going to learn the advantages of bodhicitta? Mm-hmm. Oh, by studying the Lamrim?
Or the previous verses we've got.
Yeah, the previous verses that we just went through. Okay, why did he start out with a whole section about the benefits of bodhicitta? You know, remember I said that's the advertisement. Yeah, how good it is, how wonderful it is. Okay, so, and those advantages of bodhicitta, I mean, I call it an advertisement or propaganda, but, you know, they're genuine. Okay, they're not trying to pull the wool over our heads, over our eyes, I should say. Okay, so to really remember those advantages. And then second, to protect our bodhicitta from degenerating in this life, is to strengthen it. Okay, and so the way we strengthen it is by generating bodhicitta every morning 3 times, every evening 3 times. Okay, and so you can do this just in your own heart, generating bodhicitta 3 times, or if it's helpful to you to recite a verse, yeah, then you can do, well, the verse we chanted at the beginning of taking refuge and generating bodhicitta, that will do it, or otherwise the verses that we say, they're in the Blue Book on page 73 for generating aspiring bodhicitta, that can also help you to do it. Or you can just, do it as part of your setting your motivation for the day every morning. Okay? So, and then in the evening, generating bodhicitta again. And if you do this, then what happens is your motivation for the day is clear. And so you start the day off in a good mood. Yeah. So if you wake up and you're in a bad mood or you're angry, yeah, it's going to be real difficult to generate aspiring bodhicitta, isn't it? Yeah. Not just difficult, how about impossible at that time? Yeah. So, but, just even briefly contemplating bodhicitta and its benefits for yourself and others, and remembering that aspiration, that can be very effective for overcoming being in a bad mood or waking up angry at somebody. Yeah, because you start to think, I want to attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings, including this one that I'm afraid of, including this one that I feel threatened by, like we did at the beginning of the session in our generation of our motivation. Yeah? And so that makes you, first thing in the morning, make sure it helps you be in a good mood. Okay? At nighttime too, before you go to bed, then you generate bodhicitta again, and you dedicate the merit, and then that helps you go to sleep with a free heart and a free mind, instead of going to sleep in a bad mood or going to sleep being angry or resentful. Okay? So it's a very good method for helping us to regulate our bad moods. Because often, it happens, you wake up on the wrong side of the bed and you're in a bad mood, and then you're in a bad mood the whole day. Right? Yeah. Look, we live together, we know. Don't pretend that you're not in a bad mood. Then you're the whole day, you're in a bad mood. Yeah. And then you feel crummy, and everybody else around you is kind of like, okay, yeah, whatever you want, and I'll go this way. Thank you very much. Because it's difficult being around people who are in bad moods. But if we really take bodhicitta seriously, then and use it, then saying the four immeasurables slowly and really trying to feel them, and then generating bodhicitta after that, that will help you improve the state of your mind at the get-go, at the beginning of the day, and then also before you go to sleep. Mm-hmm.
Would reciting the refuge and bodhicitta prayer be considered generating bodhicitta?
Yeah. You have to think about what you're saying. Yeah. So the thing with the reciting the verses is that the verses were written by realized masters. So by reciting what they've written, it helps us get into the mental state that they had. Yeah. And so that's the purpose of recitations. It's not because the Buddha needs recitations. It's because they're a technique to help us steer our mind in a certain direction. But if you want to just, do your own meditation and generate bodhicitta, that's fine too. Okay? Then the third precept or guideline for not letting your bodhicitta degenerate in this life is don't give it up working for sentient beings, even when they are harmful. Okay? Even when they're obnoxious, even when they tell you off, even when they tell you you're nuts, even when they say the SS did a great job of protecting the country. Our dear Prez this morning tweeted, I don't have the exact tweet, that with the people who were rioting and the Antifas and the people who were looting, that the National Guard and the police and the SS did a great job of, keeping everything calm. SS, he abbreviated for Secret Service. The actual abbreviation of Secret Service is USSS. There were other things in his tweet he could have abbreviated in order to spell out USSS. Okay, so, we may come across this kind of thing and roll our eyeballs and go, well, I'll work for the enlightenment of everybody else except him. Yeah. If you think like that, there's no way you're going to become a Buddha. Okay. Or you may read that and become infuriated or just plain old shocked out of your mind. Yeah. Okay. But instead of letting that kind of thing take over your mind, and eventually our state of mind is going to degenerate if we do. Remember this advice: do not give up working for sentient beings, even when they are harmful or obnoxious or whatever, And remember, they're just beings under the influence of afflictions and karma. They want to be happy. They don't want to suffer. Okay? That doesn't mean we don't speak out when they do something harmful, or we don't try to stop them when they're harming others. Of course we do. Yeah, but we can do that without being angry ourselves. Yeah, and so this is where bodhicitta really helps. Mm-hmm. Okay, then the fourth one: to enhance your bodhicitta, accumulate both merit and wisdom continuously. So doing that will really nurture our bodhicitta. The more we accumulate merit, because especially if before doing our practices to accumulate merit, we generate bodhicitta, then the accumulation of merit is so tremendous, as explained in the earlier verses of the text here under the advantages of bodhicitta. Okay, and then of course accumulating wisdom, the more we're able to get some understanding of emptiness, the more that actually helps to generate bodhicitta, because we become less obsessed with a non-existent, inherently existent I that we think we are. Okay, so these four are very helpful to keep bodhicitta from degenerating in this life. Yeah, because if we want to be able to die thinking about bodhicitta, if we want to be able to take a rebirth where we will meet Mahayana and Vajrayana teachers who will teach us the Bodhisattva path, then, it's important for us to not relinquish our bodhicitta or let it degenerate in this life. Okay? So this whole thing, familiarization, creating the habit, generating it again and again. Yeah? And so the more we do that, then the greater the chance of thinking about bodhicitta when we die and waking up in our next life and again thinking of bodhicitta. Okay, then how to prevent being separated from bodhicitta in future lives. So this has two sets of four. And so you can count them as 8, but they usually just count them as 4. Okay? So there's 4 harmful actions to abandon. So one is deceiving your guru, abbot, or other holy beings with lies. Okay? If you do that, then there's no way for them to guide you. And so that, these 4 are to keep us from being separated from bodhicitta in future lives. But if we separate ourselves from holy beings and from our teacher in this life, then it's creating the cause to be separate from holy beings and teachers in future lives. Okay, if we're separated from really good teachers, then it's going to be very difficult to learn the bodhicitta and, the whole bodhisattva practice. And without learning it, then we can't practice it. Okay, so it can be tempting sometimes to lie, except we don't call it lie. We're just explaining things in a certain way to our teacher. Yeah, that's all. It's not a lie. It's not a lie, is it? Yeah. It's just, if I'm really frank, I feel really ashamed and I don't want my teacher to know I did that action or thought that action. You ever do that? Yeah. So I'll just tell the story in a certain way, and I kind of won't, fess up to the whole thing, because my motivation wasn't really clear to start with. There was some goodness in my motivation, and it just, went off a little bit. So I won't tell my teacher about the little bit it went off. I'll tell them the part where that was the good motivation. So I'm telling the truth. I'm not deceiving. Right? Okay, we got that one down. Yeah, we started with doing that with our parents, and we kind of perfected achieved the perfection of, shall we call it fudging? Yeah, that's polite for lying. Okay, we want to be polite. Other people lie, I just fudge. Yeah. So we started off with our parents, and then everybody does it. So what's wrong? Okay. Then the second one is causing others to regret virtuous actions they have done. Yeah, so we may do this because we're jealous of their virtuous actions. We may do this because they used resources in a way we didn't want them to. We may do it motivated by greed because we wanted the things they gave away. So examples of causing others to regret the virtuous actions they've done is, people tell me when they go back to work after going to retreats and their colleagues say, what did you do, over your vacation time? And they say, I went to a meditation retreat. And their colleagues go, you did what? Why didn't you get a life? And so that kind of speech, trying to make somebody regret something virtuous they did. Yeah. Or maybe you're in a family and your spouse made a large donation to a charity, but you really wanted to keep the money for the family to use to go on vacation or go out to dinner. So you're upset that they used the money to give it away, with generosity, and you scold them for that. There are many kind of examples of making people regret their virtuous actions. Okay, the third one is abusing or criticizing bodhisattvas or the Mahayana. Okay, so, criticizing bodhisattvas. And here they say, well, we don't know who's a bodhisattva and who's not, so better not to criticize anybody. And I know for me, hearing that made things very, very confusing, because then does that mean, I see people doing unethical actions, but I can't say anything because that's criticizing the person. So then I whitewash it and I just pretend, those people are knocking it out. So it's just Kala Rupa and Mahakala playing. No. The key here is you can talk about actions, but don't criticize the person. Okay, we talk about the action, or we talk about other things that could have been done instead of that action. And I'll give you one example, okay? Somebody told me this story. I was not there at the time. But, there was thought, or still is, to build a huge Buddhist monument in Bodh Gaya. and it would cost a tremendous amount of money. And some people were, somebody was quite upset, saying, why are we spending so much money building large statues? Why don't we help the villagers around here and set up schools and hospitals and take care of the people? Because Bodh Gaya surrounded, the villagers are very, very poor in that area. So that person, as I heard it, went to another one of my teachers and said that. Yeah. And my other teacher said, don't criticize what that person is doing. And he just said, if I had that money, this is how I would use it. So in other words, you're not saying that person shouldn't be doing what they're doing because they're building holy objects, and that's beneficial and it's virtuous and they have a virtuous state of mind. So don't criticize them for doing that, but just say, if I had that amount of money, this is how I would use it to do bodhisattva practices. Okay? So do you see the difference here? You're not criticizing somebody else. You're just saying, well, if I were doing, had access, then this is how I would do it. Or, in certain situations, you have to call out an action that appears to be detrimental. And you can do that without, degrading the person and calling them names and saying they're a jerk and blah, 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 blah. You just say that kind of action in that situation, is not helpful. It's harming people. Okay? So this is a very subtle kind of thing. Criticizing the Mahayana would be like saying the Mahayana scriptures are not the teachings of the Buddha, or, it's totally unrealistic to think of attaining awakening and taking a vow to liberate all sentient beings isn't that egotistical and it's impractical, so why are you doing that? Okay, so that kind of thing, could be criticizing the Mahayana. So you can see, if you do that kind of thing, again, we're distancing ourselves from having good teachers and encountering the Mahayana teachings in the future. And then the fourth is not acting with a pure selfless wish, but with pretension and deceit. This one is more difficult, and it can relate in some circumstances to the one about lying. Okay? So pretension is pretending to have good qualities that you don't have. And deceit is portraying yourself as not having the faults that you do have. Okay, so the whole thing here can be, motivated by arrogance, by attachment, wanting to impress somebody. Yeah. This relates to the first Bodhisattva vow, which is not putting yourself up and putting other teachers down. Okay, here you haven't even taken the Bodhisattva vow, but you can see that, if we're trying to really benefit sentient beings, pretending to have good qualities we don't have is not going to benefit them. Is it? We're creating a false facade, maybe because we want offerings, or we want praise, or we want to get in with the in-group, or we don't want to be criticized, something like that. And then deceiving others, not, pretending to not have the faults that we do have. And so again, if we really sincerely want to benefit others, we should be honest and straightforward and not inflate our good qualities, but we don't have to hide them either. Yeah, if we have a certain ability and somebody needs somebody with help with somebody with that ability, we should say, yes, I have that ability, I can help you. Yeah, that's not the time to cover up your good qualities, because there the motivation is, I don't really want to help, so I'll say, I don't know how to do that. Okay, that's not so good. But, not to pretend to have qualities we don't have and then cover up our faults. Yeah, but really be straightforward and quite direct. And we see, His Holiness really shows that example, doesn't he? He'll talk about things. Yeah. In fact, what we just read not long ago, and he was saying, maybe in Friday night teachings, when we were talking about the 8 worldly concerns, and he says sometimes I sit on the Dharma seat and I look out there and I think, I wonder if these people like my talk. If they're going to talk well about me because I gave a good Dharma talk. And he just says that, yeah? So that's a good example, just learning to be transparent. Okay, so those are the 4 to abandon those harmful actions. And then there's 4 constructive actions to practice. So the first one here goes with the first one in the other list. So abandon deliberately deceiving and lying to gurus, abbots, and so forth. Okay? And then the second one, be straightforward without pretense or deceit. That goes with the 4th one of the 4 to abandon. Okay? Generate recognition of bodhisattvas as your teachers and praise them. That goes with the 3rd of the previous list. Yeah, so instead of criticizing them, really praise them. And remember, praising somebody is not something that benefits that other person. It's something that benefits us. Yeah, because when we can see other people's good qualities and speak of them, it increases our motivation and our wish to generate those same virtuous qualities ourselves. Okay, and it creates merit, and it encourages other people in virtue. Yeah, so praising others is something good to do. Mm-hmm. I remember my very first Kopan course. After it, we did a retreat. So there was one monk who led the retreat. And he was very honest about us. And, he talked about his faults and so on. And at the end, and one of the faults he was talking about was, the mind that likes to receive offerings and stuff. And so at the end, they did a collection, to offer to him. And I didn't give anything because I thought I don't want to contribute to him generating a negative state of mind by becoming attached to offerings or getting arrogant about receiving offerings. And that was my beginner's mind thinking like that. Later, I realized, that wasn't the right attitude on my part, because what I needed to do was express my appreciation for what he did. And one way to do that was to make offerings. And I needed to praise him, because he did a very good job at doing it. And, whether handling his arrogance is his thing to do. My practice is to praise and to make offerings. Okay. But it's funny thinking about that now and how, I don't know if you do this, but how your mind thought when you first met it, met the Dharma and the ideas you had and so on. And some of them are really quite laughable now, either laughable or cryable. Okay, and then the fourth of the constructive actions is assume the responsibility yourself to lead all sentient beings to awakening. And that counteracts the second of the ones to abandon, which was causing others to regret virtuous actions they have done. So instead, you want to really encourage them in their virtuous actions and take the responsibility to lead them to awakening yourself. Okay, so those are the precepts when you take the when you generate aspiring bodhicitta with commitment in a ceremony. Okay, so you can just, when they do the ceremony, just generate aspiring bodhicitta without the commitment, in which case then the guidelines you don't have to follow the guidelines. When you take it with commitment, then you really want to pay attention and follow the guidelines. So needless to say, if we've taken the Bodhisattva vow, we should also follow those guidelines.
One teacher I know, he kind of did not want it to his students that they share where he came from, what kind of past he had.
Mm-hmm.
So he was a homeless child in Lhasa, and so that was a secret. I don't share the name now because he did not want it to be shared.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, because that is not very open when I first heard that, I thought, okay, you don't share your experiences. So I never shared my experiences, how I grew up, because I was pretending that I did not grow up where I grew up. I did not share that for long, just in the recent years. And but I wonder if that was, I think my motivation was to pretend I'm somebody else. I'm somebody from a good household with a good education and childhood and such. And I don't know what motivation this teacher had, but I wonder about that.
Yeah. We never know somebody else's motivation. Yeah. I personally find it quite inspiring when I hear that people came from very difficult backgrounds, and then I can see what they've become in their life. I find that example very inspiring, and I really appreciate those people when they reveal, the difficulties that they've gone through in the past. Okay. I don't think we have to be ashamed of, I mean, we got born and grew up where we were. It wasn't like there was some intention on our part to do something. And so many people are really able to overcome the conditioning that they had, the difficulties they had when they were young. And like I said, I find that really admirable and inspiring. Okay. So we can also talk about bodhicitta in terms of conventional bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. Okay, so conventional bodhicitta is this bodhicitta, the aspiration to attain full awakening to benefit others. Yeah. And ultimate bodhicitta is the wisdom realizing emptiness in the mind of a bodhisattva. So when hearers and solitary realizers have the mind realizing emptiness, we don't call that ultimate bodhicitta because they haven't generated conventional bodhicitta yet. So the conventional bodhicitta, primarily, not completely, but primarily through that, we create the causes to attain the Buddha's form bodies, the emanation body and the enjoyment body. And through ultimate bodhicitta, we create the causes to, or circumstances to attain the nature truth body and the wisdom truth body. So the Dharmakaya of a Buddha. Okay. And then taking the Bodhisattva vow, most of our other sets of ethical straits, because saying Bodhisattva vow is not really, definitely it's not vows. They're precepts, they're not vows. But even saying vow to mean a set of precepts, the Sanskrit word means more ethical restraints, or an ethical code. So you're taking an ethical code, you're taking ethical restraints. You're not taking a vow in the sense of how we think of vows in Christianity. Yeah. So at one of our monastic gatherings, Bhikkhu Bodhi spoke at great length about this. That what we have in the Pratimoksha, they're trainings, they're guidelines, they're precepts, advice, what to do. But don't look at them as, how we usually hear vows are kept in Christianity, where you say, I will not do that, and if you break it, then you go to hell. Okay, that's not the whole idea behind setting up the precepts and the trainings is really to help us. And like we always hear, the reason we take them is because we can't keep them perfectly. Yeah. If you could keep them perfectly, you don't need them. And so it's actually, ethical restraints, ethical code. And does that sound different to your ears? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm keeping the Bodhisattva ethical code. Yeah, to me that sounds quite different. Oh, an ethical code. Yeah, that's something good. People should have ethical codes that they live by. Yeah. So, okay, verse 16. In the way one, let's see how it's translated here. Okay, 16 here. As is understood by the distinction between aspiring to go and actually going, so the wise understand in turn the distinction between these two. This one says, in the way one understands the difference between wishing and going, in the same way those proficient should understand the difference between the two sequentially. Okay, let's see another translation. Okay, as is understood by the instances of desiring to go and going, so the wise should understand respectively the distinction between these two. That one's good. It's quite similar to the first one we read. Okay, so I already talked about the desire to go and actually going. Yeah, so keep that in mind, and that's the distinction between these two. Okay. Okay, now we're going into a section that is about explaining the difference in the benefits of the aspiring and engaging minds. Okay, so first, there's several verses on the benefits of the aspiring mind. So that starts with verse 17, which here reads, although great fruits occur in cyclic existence, from the mind that aspires to awaken, an uninterrupted flow of merit does not ensue, as it does with the engaging mind. Or here, although great fruits will arise in cyclic existence from the mind that wishes or aspires for awakening, an uninterrupted flow of merit will not arise, as in the case of the engaging mind. Okay? So what it's saying here is, if you have aspiring bodhicitta, there's many, many good results that will come from that in cyclic existence. Yeah. But compared to the good results and the merit you create by taking in generating engaging bodhicitta, there's a big difference between those, because with aspiring bodhicitta, you don't have the uninterrupted flow of merit. Okay, so here it's talking about, so remember, somebody who actually has engaging bodhicitta has entered the bodhisattva path of accumulation and has that very strong bodhicitta. So they're really practicing doing all their actions with the motivation of bodhicitta. And so because of that, because their altruistic intention is generated, kind of continuously, then the merit accumulated from that is an uninterrupted flow. And therefore, the benefits derived from that are very, very great. Yeah. So it's kind of like, if you're angry just for a few minutes and then you forget about it, you may remember it later and get angry for a few minutes, and forget about it again, then remember it, the incident in 3 days, and get angry again, but for a short time. You're getting angry, but you're doing a lot of other things between those episodes of anger. But think about it, when you get angry, and you are angry all day. Yeah. Maybe a little break when you have chocolate cake. Yeah. It's like, oh, it's Venerable Jigme's birthday. We got chocolate cake. I'm not in a bad mood for 5 minutes while I eat my chocolate cake. Yeah. But the rest of the day, yeah. So you can see there's a difference, when we sustain an upset mind, it's going to have a much heavier and long-term results. In the same way, when we sustain a virtuous state of mind, the results are going to be much fuller and much more long-lasting. Okay. Then 18. So that one was, it's interesting. That verse was said to be the benefits of aspiring bodhicitta. To me, it seems like you're really emphasizing the benefits of engaging bodhicitta in that verse, number 17. But that's the outline. The outline says for verse 18 and 19, that's the benefits of engaging bodhicitta. Okay, so here, for one who has perfectly adopted his mind, with the thought never to turn away, for the sake of totally liberating the infinite realms of sentient beings. From that time onwards, even while asleep or lacking conscientiousness, a force of merit equal to the sky will continuously ensue. Okay, so that's explaining the uninterrupted flow of merit from verse 17, okay? So somebody who's perfectly adopted their mind, what does this one say? For those who have perfectly seized this mind, I like that better. You seize engaging bodhicitta. It's like, instead of grasping at true existence and grasping at money, we're seizing bodhicitta. We're not going to give it up. Okay. So, for those who have perfectly seized this mind with the thought never to turn away from totally liberating the infinite forms of life, from that time hence, even while asleep or unconcerned, a force of merit equal to the sky will perpetually ensue. Okay, so for somebody who has really strong bodhicitta, and they've said, bodhicitta is the meaning of my life, it's the purpose of my life, No way am I ever going to give this up. No way do I want to become an arhat. Yeah, no way do I want to give fuel to my self-centered mind. Yeah, so for somebody like that who's really aiming for full awakening and really wants to benefit sentient beings, and that wish is strong, so that, and they don't want to, turn away from it. Okay, so for such a person, when they generate that mind, because of the strength of it, that mind is gonna, it's not gonna be, well, I feel it, for 2 seconds on Monday and 3 seconds on Tuesday. It's gonna be something that really occupies your whole consciousness all day long. So for somebody like that, who really in their heart has the welfare of all sentient beings as the most important in their life. So that person, even if they're sleeping, even if they're, unconcerned or, not having they're distracted with other things. Yeah, even in that situation, a force of merit equal to the sky continually ensues. Yeah. So that's a big benefit, isn't it? I mean, to be accumulating merit like the sky continuously. Yeah. So you might say, well, why does such a person, even, they're zonked out sleeping, why do they accumulate merit? Well, because the way they're practicing, they're sleeping in order to rest their body and mind so that they can arise and work for the benefit of others. Or they're sleeping and they're doing some kind of meditation practice when they're asleep. Okay, so their bodhicitta hasn't gone away, when they sleep. They're sleeping with that motivation. Whereas I don't know about you, but at nighttime when I lay down, it's like, oh, I'm so tired. This feels really good. Now I get to rest. So that, there's a big difference in those two motivations, isn't there? So, and then considering however long you're sleeping, that motivation is there under the surface, then there's going to be a very big difference in the outcome, the result of that. Okay? So, contemplating these kind of benefits of aspiring and engaging bodhicitta, it really, it like does something to our minds. Like, yeah, I want to generate that. I want to have that quality. Because, just think of what kind of person you would be if you really had bodhicitta in your mind all day. Yeah. No more bad moods. Yeah. If you got angry, you'd be able to counteract it really quickly. Yeah. When something desirable appeared, your mind wouldn't totally go for it and sink into it. Yeah. You would really have your composure and your loving compassion with you all the time. And everybody you come in contact with would feel that. Yeah. Hopefully, unless they're quite obscured, which sometimes happens. But, you see that. Do you meet certain people? And it's like, oh, there's something special about that person. And I want to be like them. There's some kind of kindness, compassion there. And it's evident, even though they're just talking about who knows what. Yeah. I should tell you about the first conversation I had with my very first Dharma teacher. So, this was the stage in my life where I had just been accepted into a semi-professional dance group, and I had just had my ears pierced, and I was wearing my, Indian colorful stuff, and anklets that jingled, you know. And yeah, and I had offered, because people were coming into town for this retreat, so I offered the person who was organizing it, I said, if anybody comes into this town, they can stay with us. So somebody was coming, an old student of Rinpoche's was coming into town, so she was staying with us. So when she heard Rinpoche was arriving at Los Angeles International Airport, she wanted to go to greet him. So I drove her there. Okay, so we park, we go in. In those days, you could actually go to the terminal inside the gate and meet somebody at the gate. Okay, so we went to meet. And, these two Tibetan lamas walk out. And, one of them starts talking to me and, how are you? And what's your name? This kind of stuff. And then he starts telling me about the dolphins that he had seen at SeaWorld, because I think they had just come from San Diego or Hawaii or I don't know, somewhere. And so we had this conversation about dolphins. Yeah. That was my first talk with my first Dharma teacher, because that was the level of my mind. Yeah. But there was something about him that struck me, even though we were talking about dolphins. Yeah. I was like, this person isn't just kind of any old run-of-the-mill person who's trying to impress a stranger during their first conversation. Yeah, there's something there. Yeah. So that's, by the power of somebody's bodhicitta. You feel there's some unusual quality, something happening in that person's mind that makes them different. Okay, verse 20. So is about the reasons that there are such benefits. So here, establishing the benefits by quoting scripture. So there's one scripture called the Sutra Requested by Subahu, which I've never read. But the verse says, because Shantideva here is showing that what he is saying he didn't just make up, it's actually found in the Mahayana Sutras. So he says, for the sake of those inclined towards the lower, meaning the hearer and solitary realizer vehicles, this is taught along with the correctness by the Tathagata himself in the sutra requested by Subahu. Well, that verse doesn't make much sense, does it? Here it says, for the sake of those inclined toward the lesser vehicle, this was logically asserted by the Tathagata in the sutra requested by Subahu. There's a footnote here. Let's see what it says. Okay, so here's the quotation from the sutra. If one perseveres for the sake of bringing happiness and benefit to an infinite number of beings, then the infinite roots of virtue from this infinite aim that bears in mind the happiness and benefit of all sentient beings shall increase, expand, and reach towards fulfillment every moment, day and night, regardless of whether one is unconscientious or even asleep. So that's explaining the source of what he said in verse 18 or 19 about the benefits of the engaging bodhicitta and having this huge accumulation, no matter whether you're sleeping or doing, something else. Okay, that's verse 20. Verse 21 is establishing the benefits of bodhicitta by using logic and reasoning. And so first, a number of verses about the benefits of aspiring bodhicitta. Okay, So verse 21. If even the thought to relieve living beings of merely a headache is a beneficial intention endowed with infinite goodness, then what need is there to mention the wish to dispel their inconceivable misery, wishing every single one of them to realize boundless good qualities? So this is from another scripture. Okay. That says, so somebody generated the limited thought, may I free sentient beings from their headaches. That person had a true concern for others that generated infinite merit. Okay, so if that is so, what need is there to mention that the wish to eliminate infinite unhappiness of each sentient being and to see each of them with the infinite qualities of a Buddha has limitless merit? Okay, so if you have, this is a good thing. If you have headaches to practice, this is migraine medicine. Yeah. So when you have a migraine, you think, may I, as long as I have this migraine, you can still take medicine. Please take medicine, but you think, may I take on myself all the headaches of all sentient beings? Because a lot of other sentient beings are having migraines and having ordinary headaches at this very moment. So as long as I'm having a headache, may I take on the headache, the suffering of headaches of all sentient beings. Yeah. So even if that kind of idea, creates infinite merit, then what about the thought, I want to give infinite happiness, especially the happiness of Dharma, especially the happiness of the Bodhisattva paths and grounds, especially the happiness of awakening. I want to give that to each and every sentient being. Just having that thought, is going to be like unbelievable. If even the first thought to eliminate people's headaches is something that creates infinite merit, this other thought, which is so much greater, that it leaves the thought to eliminate headaches behind in the dust, then you can really see the value of aspiring bodhicitta. And also, if you just think about it, actually this is going to come in the next verse, so let's do the next verse. Okay? Verse 23. Regardless of whether it is father or mother, who has such intention to benefit, regardless of whether God, sage, or Brahmas, do they possess it? Okay, so here, 23. Do even fathers and mothers have such a benevolent intention as this? Do the gods and sages, does even Brahma have it? Yeah. So think about it. Yeah. Who do you know who wishes you well the most? Yeah. In regular mundane life, who's the person who wishes us well the strongest? It's our parents or whoever raised us. Could be a grandparent, it could be an adopter, maybe you were in foster care or whatever. But whoever raised us and when we were a child and wanted us to grow up to become a good adult, that's the person who cared for us the most. Did that person have bodhicitta? Did they want you to attain the happiness of full awakening? No. Yeah. So that's why he says, even mothers and fathers who care for their kids so much, or whatever a caregiver you had, they wished you well as much as a worldly person could, but they didn't have the bodhicitta. Yeah. So this is the greatness of bodhisattvas, is, having that kind of mind that, because they say bodhisattvas have more compassion for us than we have for ourselves. And when you really look at it, it's true. If compassion is the wish to be free of suffering, we want ourselves to be free of suffering. But we also do all these things that self-sabotage, that make us suffer more. Bodhisattvas want us to be free of suffering, and they don't want us to do those actions that make us suffer more. And they're going to try and reach out and help us so we don't do those actions and create the causes for more suffering. So who else has that kind of intention towards us? Yeah. Who else, when we're shooting ourselves in the foot or doing some stupid, ridiculous thing, most people just say, that person, I can't help them. They're beyond help. Look what they're doing. They're so stupid. They're shooting themselves in the foot. Yeah, why don't they get their act together? Just forget it. I'm not going to try and help them anymore. Look, they don't listen anyway. Yeah? How many people have said that about us when we've done stupid things in our life? Yeah? Of course, we don't know because they don't tell us directly. But sometimes they might, actually. But look at what a bodhisattva does. Bodhisattvas never abandon us. Yeah, we do the most stupid, obnoxious, ridiculous, self-sabotaging things, harmful things that harm ourselves and others, and they never abandon us. They don't kind of go, finish, basta, finito, let some other Buddha or Bodhisattva help you. I can't do it. Okay, they never say that. Yeah. Can you imagine how tempting it is to say that? I mean, how many times do we say that to other people? Yeah. Like your BBC, I'm helping all these people. I'm working so hard to help them, help them get out of the hole they've dug for themselves. And they just don't listen. And I'm fed up. Yeah? Like, good luck. And I'm gone. 'Cause you're hopeless. And the thing, bodhisattvas never do that. Not for one single sentient being. Not for one. If you think of the most obnoxious person you know, yeah, bodhisattvas don't even give up on that person. Yeah, so they're not going to give up on us. So wouldn't it be wonderful if we generated that same quality of bodhicitta, that same quality of great compassion that the bodhisattvas have, so that we don't give up on anybody, so that our mind is firm and strong in its compassion. Yeah, wouldn't that be amazing to have that kind of mind? Yeah, so that's the kind of benefit we're talking about. Even some god, Indra, Brahma, I don't know, whatever, gods of other traditions or whatever, or, worldly gods in the desire realm and the form realm and the formless realms, they don't have this kind of compassion for us. Okay, different sages, different Brahmas, these beings may all be very well respected in society, but they don't have the level of compassion that bodhisattvas have, because there isn't the bodhicitta isn't present in their mind. So who do we want to take as role models? Yeah, do we want to take low-grade role models, or we want to take the best people as role models? Okay. So that's it for today. Maybe time for a couple of questions? Mm-hmm.
It's back to the Generating Bodhicitta section. When a bodhisattva has their first moment of spontaneous bodhicitta, Is it necessarily either engaging or aspiring, or could it come from either place? You know, when you have that moment?
Yeah. Probably it's going to be aspiring first. Yeah. And then it could very quickly go on to engaging if there's a strong commitment to engage in the Bodhisattva deeds. Yeah. But it's much easier to do aspiring, so I would assume that that's the first thing, and then you would go on to what's more. If you don't have aspiring bodhicitta, you're not going to generate engaging. Yeah. Nothing else? Okay.